everyone. Good evening. We're so excited you're here and ready to start our Power of Parents event as part of the Power of Community campaign. I'm going to get my slides up and running here. There we go. So good evening again. My name is Jessie Ilhart, and I'm the Executive Director of VOCEL, Viewing Our Children as Emerging Leaders. And I'm thrilled to welcome you to the first event in VOCEL's Power of Community campaign. Again, the Power of Parents. With the Power of Community campaign, we are lifting up and celebrating the adults who make the most impact in young children's lives: parents, caregivers, teachers, and school leaders. And we're also highlighting the way that VOCEL centers the value of community in all of our work, really helping adults learn not only from VOCEL's expertise, but also from one another. And what better place to start than with parents and caregivers? So as I come to you tonight from my home, my own 6-week-old baby is sleeping just down the hall. My 4-year-old is here playing with Legos downstairs, and my mother, who's their grandmother, is here caring for them both so that I can be here on screen with all of you. So while I join you as VOCEL's co-founder and executive director, I think it's important that you know I also join you as a mom. And it's fair to say with all of that, I certainly know the impact of parents and the importance and crucialness really of having a supportive community. So for tonight, as we get started, I want to thank all of our Power of Community sponsors, and especially Lindy and Michael Kaiser, who are the presenting sponsors of the entire Power of Community campaign, and IMC, who is the presenting sponsor of tonight's Power of Parents event. And thank you to all of you also for joining, taking the time out of your evening and joining for what I hope will be an inspiring and educational 45 minutes. I'm going to start by sharing a quick overview of VOCEL's approach to supporting parents and caregivers, and then I'll bring in a panel of incredible parents, educators, and experts to really continue the conversation about the power of parents. So first, though, I want to kick off here in the chat and kind of build some community among all of us who are here. So if you're here as an attendee, as a panelist, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat, share your name, where you're joining us from, and what community means to you. It can be as simple or as complex as you want to take that question, but what community means to you? And I'll put my answer in here as we get started. So we'll build some community in the chat, and then throughout the presentation tonight also, and during the panel, you can use the chat as well to share any questions, comments that you might have. If you hear something that someone says that really just hits home for you, feel free to put that into the chat. Also, if you have questions, you can put them there, questions for any of the panelists as well, and we'll aim to answer them as we go. So to begin, at VOCEL, it's important that you know we believe a few things are true. First, we believe that all children can thrive, but not all children are thriving in Chicago today. And it's said that in Chicago, no matter what social inequity you're tracking, there is only one map. So that would mean that the same families are facing lack of access to quality healthcare, to quality jobs. The same families are bearing the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, and those same families face inequitable access to early care and learning experiences during their children's first 5 years of life. And we know that those first 5 years are the most important for brain development. So without access to those early learning experiences, 77% of children from low-income households start kindergarten behind. And we know that many kids who start school behind never catch up. We also know that thriving children need an ecosystem of extraordinary adults. So parents and caregivers, school leaders, and teachers. Really takes all of these people working together to support kiddos. And all of these adults, parents, school leaders, teachers, can have a massive impact on children's brain development. Their work literally shapes the architecture of a child's brain, which in turn impacts how that child learns in school and how they're able to relate to others and build relationships. So it's definitely not an overstatement to say that those folks, the parents, caregivers, teachers, have really a lifelong impact on children and also on our society. Third, we know that all adults can be extraordinary with the right knowledge, tools, and a community of support around them. So in large part, that's what we're going to discuss tonight, parents and the extraordinary impact that they have on their children. And just a moment ago, I mentioned that not all children in Chicago are thriving today. And that's in large part because our city doesn't offer support for all children's parents and caregivers. So some neighborhoods have loads of parent-toddler programs, mommy and me classes, parent support groups, programs that sometimes might seem like they're just for fun, but actually they're providing really crucial learning and social support for both the young children and for the parents at a time that couldn't be more important for children's brain development. And whereas some neighborhoods have many of these programs, other neighborhoods have little to none. And so VOCEL's family programs are changing that and providing knowledge, tools, and that community of support to parents across the city. So those three beliefs are really the foundation of all of our programs. At VOCEL, we have the Child Parent Academy and our Powered by VOCEL programs, which are both for parents and caregivers and young children. We have the Building Early Learning Leaders program for school leaders and the Early Educators for Thriving Children Fellowship for teachers. But tonight, we're going to be focused on our work with parents and caregivers. So to tell you a little bit about our Child Parent Academy. This is our core program, which will serve 200 children and their parents this year at 20 sites across the west, southwest, and south sides of Chicago. And for this program, we work in partnership with Chicago Public Schools, really supporting parents and caregivers in the community with young children who will one day attend those Chicago Public Schools as kindergartners and beyond. And then if you were to see the Child Parent Academy in action, you would see that parents and their children meet once a week with VOCEL teachers and family support specialists. And first, the parents and children spend time together with teachers, where our teachers are really modeling and demonstrating best practices with children, but also parents and caregivers are getting to participate in really fun, sometimes messy activities with their young children that they might not be able to, might not imagine doing at first at home, but then can also recreate and continue to do at home. So that's one part of the Child Parent Academy. Also, parents have time to meet in community with one another without their children, which is really important, right? That break from their kiddos for a little bit where they can share their common challenges and find support in a really non-judgmental place. Also, through this program, we extend support to home. So providing brain bags for families, which are filled with books and tools for at-home learning, activity kits. And we also provide text message tips to support families in their parenting. And all of the activities in the classes, in the text message tips, in the brain bag activities, really reflect our curriculum or our pedagogy, which has 3 pillars that I want to tell you about really briefly. So first in our program, we encourage and demonstrate lots of talk. So in our classes, you would hear teachers using advanced vocabulary like available, frustrated, delicious, and cooperative. You'd hear them really encouraging children to express themselves, talking back and forth with children, and you would rarely hear teachers telling children to be quiet or telling children to shh. We really encourage lots of language. Second, we encourage and demonstrate high levels of emotional support. So we believe all feelings are valid and children are encouraged to talk about their feelings and show their feelings in different ways. And adults model the ways to do just that. So when children are upset, adults really provide comfort, creating a nurturing bond from which the child can explore and take risks. And third, we encourage outside of the box thinking. So we see that too many practices in many schools today encourage kind of uniformity and discourage sort of that individuality that our world really benefits from. So at VOCEL classes, you'll hear kids being recognized for doing something differently. Messages of acceptance if a child wants to lay on their stomach for story time instead of sitting up cross-legged. So these three pillars of our curriculum are used for our teachers to support kids, but are also demonstrated to families so that parents and caregivers can see some of these tools in action as well. And we've really designed VOCEL's programs and educational approach with intentionality. We believe that these three pillars are really aligned to the skills that show up in the best leaders later in life: communication, empathy, creativity, and critical thinking. And we're seeing that the model is working. So VOCEL parents and caregivers are developing deeper knowledge of child development and stronger resilience. And the children are showing development in the communication and social emotional skills that are setting them up for success, not only in school, but also long-term in life. So over the past year, in addition to the Child Parent Academy, we've also been piloting a new approach with a program that we call Powered by VOCEL. So in our regular Child Parent Academy, classes are led by our amazing VOCEL teachers and family support specialists. But in partnership with one of the schools in Chicago, Chavez, we're going to meet some folks from later tonight, we designed a new program called Powered by VOCEL, where we train parent leaders in the schools and communities where we work to lead the Child Parent Academy classes at their own schools with ongoing coaching from VOCEL's teachers. So we're going to learn more about Powered by VOCEL's impact during tonight's panel conversation. So in just a moment, I'm going to bring in our panelists. I'm thrilled to be joined tonight by three wonderful people. So we have Rocío Arambula, one of our incredible two parent leaders for the inaugural cohort of the Powered by VOCEL program at Chavez Multicultural Academy, which is a neighborhood elementary school here in Chicago. We also have with us Joe Rosen, who is assistant principal at Chavez. And we have Nat Fikitzret, who is a licensed somatic and trauma-informed psychotherapist and the founder of Come Back to Care. So I want to welcome Rocío, Joe, and Nat. Thank you all so much for being with us here tonight. I'll invite you to come on screen and we'll get started with our panel discussion. There they all are. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. All right, so I want to get started with Rocío because I just mentioned Powered by VOCEL. And it's important for me to mention that Rocío is one of a powerful duo of parent leaders. So her partner, Joanna, is not here with us tonight, but these two women have worked so closely together. They are in such close communication that I know that Joanna's insights will, I'm sure, come through in Rocío's responses tonight. Rocío, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the impact of this program on the parents and the kids. But I want to start with talking about, what impact the Powered by VOCEL program had on you personally, if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. The impact that VOCEL had with me, being part of the VOCEL program, it was to be empathetic, to be passionate, to be attentive to others and their problems, to find the best techniques to help with the children's education and help parents continue with the educational path.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit more about from the beginning of the program to the end of the program. What difference did you see, what differences did you see in yourself, if any?
Well, at the beginning, we were so nervous. My colleague Joanna and I were like, oh, this is when the pandemic was barely initiating. We're all staying home. So we're a bit clueless, like, are we going to be able to do this? Are we going to be able to go through this process? So at the beginning, it was a little challenging going through this also with all the technology through Zoom. But at the end, when our third session ended, we felt so comfortable. We saw so much change in the children and the parents and us ourselves, how much we changed and grew within the program as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Thinking about those nerves in the beginning. I think that's all in some ways that's sort of universal, right? That this idea that teachers also, I think, are often, nervous in the beginning of the year, and to see that parents are kind of in that same place, can share that same space. And it just reminds me also of thinking about the growth you saw in yourself over this time, how much it illustrates that power of parents, right? By the end of just 3 sessions, you were comfortable leading a group of fellow parents. It's just a reminder, I think, how powerful parents and caregivers really are. And I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about the impact you saw on the parents in your Chavez group. What difference the classes made for them.
Definitely. The impact was very, very significant and appreciative an experience. VOCEL helped them in so many different ways by providing meals, diapers, clothes, wipes, toys, gift cards when the families were in need. Again, with the whole pandemic barely starting, many of these families lost their jobs or lost hours, had less hours to work. So with our parent discussion meetings, a lot of those parents were able to open up and release some of that stress, talk to us, so we could find ways and how we could help each other, bring us closer as parents and as a community.
Yeah, and I want to touch on for anyone who's listening who's here tonight, who has known VOCEL for a while. Our programs previous to the pandemic didn't always provide some of those needs, like the diapers that Rocío was talking about, the meals, grocery support. But we found amidst the pandemic, in providing some of those things for families, it really built up a trust. And I think it really strengthened the community when families saw, like, gosh, these are needs I wouldn't maybe expect to talk about or to be addressed by an organization that I'm a part of. But there's a vulnerability and a trust that was built when we all talked about how the pandemic was affecting us. And I'm wondering, Nat, if you can, from your perspective, and the research and expertise experience that you've had, if you could comment on that piece of supporting parents kind of holistically, supporting families. What difference have you seen that make? Or do you think that that's something that's crucial for programs to do, or can they sort of focus on education only?
Thank you, Jessie. I think the impact of supporting parents to be the best that they can be has such a significant impact, especially when they feel held enough so that they can hold their children and other people in their community. I think a lot of partnerships that I have seen so far is from a very top-down approach, but what you're doing that's a little bit different, which is very significant, is supporting parents from the ground up, using this bottom-up approach to build this real sense of community. And when parents feel that their needs are met and their sense of isolation is addressed, and they're going through this similar experience together as a community, they can really make real impact.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And Joe, I want to come over to you. As the assistant principal at Chavez, you helped to select Rocío and Joanna as the parent leaders, and also made the decision to bring the Child Parent Academy to Chavez. I'm wondering, as Rocío was talking about some of the impacts, if those were the things that you were hoping the program would bring, or can you tell us a little bit about kind of why you signed on to bring this program to Chavez, and what impacts you were hoping for?
Sure, thanks, Jessie. So Chavez is in the back of the yards neighborhood. We often see, I think you mentioned this, Jessie, earlier, we often see about 50 to 60% of our kindergartners come into school with very limited limited knowledge, years behind their peers who have been to preschool, who have had some kind of instruction prior to kindergarten. So we're seeing students who don't know their letters, don't know their letter sounds, don't know their colors, don't know their shapes, don't know anything really coming into it. It's their first experience with school, with other students, with other children, interacting with other people. And so that was what I think drove our interest in bringing VOCEL to Chavez, is to see what kind of impact this could have on children as young as what 2, 3, 4 years old, children that are preparing for preschool. And when VOCEL brought this to us, it was initially pitched, if you want to call it pitched to us, as something that would be led by VOCEL staff members. I think we evolved together, and it became, it went from VOCEL staff members to our staff members to more directed by our parents. And these specific parents were chosen very intentionally. We are pretty intentional about choosing parents that we feel like are very committed, are extremely responsible, that we trust completely to run a program, to completely take over and run a program like this. And in speaking with Joanna and Rocío, what I saw as far as growth is concerned, what I saw was, in speaking with them initially, there was a lot of nervousness, and it really didn't have to do with the pandemic as much as it had to do with what we're being put in a situation where we have to lead a program for the first time. We're not teachers, we're not this, we're not that, and certainly by the end of program, they had the confidence to be able to do that. But we had conversations initially like, well, what kind of expert am I that I can lead a group of parents to open up and talk about certain things? But it took no time at all for them to build that confidence. And that's the growth that I saw within them for sure. And also I was lucky enough and happy to see all the progress that they made with students and with parents through videos that they shared with us, to see students working with their hands. And I know you said they get messy sometimes, but that's very important for them to both find motor skills and to work on their colors and to learn repetitively and to think for themselves and to feel for themselves and to talk through those things. But anyhow, that's one of the biggest things that I saw in their growth, was going from, can I lead this, to, wow, I can lead this and empower other parents to take on the same roles.
It's great. I appreciate that you touched on the fact that there's this multi-layered impact that we've found through this program. And it really has, I think you alluded to this, it's really come about organically as we work together with the team at Chavez and with Rocío and Joanna, seeing that the impact of this program is not only on the children, not only on their parents and caregivers, but also on the parent leaders themselves. And I think the impact on the parents and caregivers is also multifaceted. And Rocío, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to this, that there's part of being effective as a parent that might be knowing the specific things to do, like knowing how to talk to a child through a tantrum or meltdown, or knowing how to introduce colors or letters. But then there's another less tangible part that's the instincts, right? Using your instincts, knowing to rely on yourself, having that community of support. I'm wondering if you saw improvements in both areas with your fellow parents that you were leading, if you saw more of one, more of the other, kind of what did parents come into your program wanting to improve in, and then what did you see?
At first, the parents were a little clueless of what was the program or how was it going to help them with their children's education. But once we got it started with the activities, with the reading, the story time, they saw so much improvement in their children with just simple tasks, a simple activity with the water bottle, how to calm them down. And it was so amazing to see the children with the parents helping each other out, doing these activities, or doing simple things with the paper roll, making out of a dragon. We read that on one of the stories, making a dragon out of the toilet paper. The kids were so happy to do that, so amazed. They were, because they were able to see the colors, they were able to put on their eyes. So, and also with the books that were given with the brain bags, many students, we had many parents tell us the students weren't speaking much for a 3 or 4-year-old. So with there's one student specifically, when she received that book, she started to read or try to read the book by herself, mimicking the images that she saw on those pages. So it was very, very, when her mother sent us the video, we were like, this is what the program is about, to help them grow, to teach parents and their children to find different ways to help them grow.
Oh, it's powerful thinking about, right, such, like you said, such simple activities, such things that seem like play, that seem just fun, joyful, it can have such a big impact. And I think about the lasting impact of that for a parent or caregiver who sees you model this simple activity, right? With it, like you were talking about the water bottle, I'm imagining you're talking about like a sensory shaker or a calm down bottle, right? But taking a water bottle, taking some water, maybe some glitter, simple materials that are accessible. And then once a parent or caregiver sees that, right, they might be able to then apply that same approach to any other number of activities, right? So it could go on for so long. And I will also struck by what you said about the pride that the parent must have had sending you that video of her daughter and her language skills, and how excited that must have made mom too. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit specifically to that of the kids' growth that you saw. And Joe started to speak about this, how, you know, so many kids come to kindergarten not ready, not having some of those skills. What were the things that you saw change the most in kids from beginning to end?
In general, we did have, as mentioned before, many parents stated that their children weren't speaking or didn't know their colors or anything. As the classes went by, many of these parents and ourselves, we saw it in the pictures they would send us, the videos they would send us. The students were cutting off different activities on their own with the correct scissors they needed for that age. They were talking more, they knew their numbers, they knew their colors. They knew the songs, because Joanna will put songs at the beginning of every class and towards the end. They're already knowing their songs. So it's amazing how much they've grown in such a, you could say, in a 10-week period, which doesn't seem much to see them know so much with that time, and in a fun way. Like you said, it was a very fun way of educating them with different things.
Yeah, and it's interesting, something that you mentioned of knowing the words of the songs, right? Being able to follow along, something like that, I think could seem to some like, oh, that's nice. That's like a nice thing to have, right? But I'm struck by like the importance of that for a child who is entering school, to feel comfortable that they have experienced something like this before, right? And it's such a big transition for children to enter school, especially if they've been with mom or dad or grandma or TT or whoever it might be, all the way up until all of a sudden they're 5 years old, right? And I'm sure that Joe has seen that some of that separation difficulty with kids when they come in for the first time and they're not used to it. It can be so scary. And so to have that familiarity with a school-like environment, to have sang songs together with a group, it's really a bigger deal, I think, than it might appear on the surface. And I'm curious, you brought up some things that were academic, some other things that were more social. I'm curious, Nat, if you can speak a little bit about this. And I want to also mention, Nat, this I didn't share that I was going to say this, so I apologize for not giving you a heads up, but I just saw that you were named as one of 3 award winners for innovation in early childhood mental health. So I apologize for embarrassing you by saying that, but it's a national award from 0 to 3. So I think you are very qualified to speak on this from a mental health perspective, how you think about the interplay or comparative importance of academics and social emotional or mental health development for young children at this kind of early age, how you think about those things and whether one's more important than the other. Talk to us a little more about that.
The pressure is on, Jessie. Thank you. But you summed it up so beautifully, the word interplay. I think social skills and academic skills go so hand in hand. And I think learning takes place when children feel safe and secure in that relationship with their caregivers. And by empowering parents to be the best teachers that they can be, that we know as professionals that parents can be, as leaders and game changers that you mentioned, I think children learn so much. They learn to be regulated and be in that calm, alert state, ready to receive, learn, and initiate so many play and other academic skills at home. So when time comes for them to transition into school, they are much more ready. They know the songs, they know the games, and they're ready to just bring all of that skill that they develop at home into the classroom with peers and with teachers. So it goes so hand in hand. Yeah. And it starts with the relationship.
Yeah. So yeah, starting with that relationship. And I think that that's one of the places I come back to again, thinking, Rocío, what that you shared of like, who am I qualified for this? I also think that's a thought that I hear many parents say, like, I don't know all the right things to do to prepare my child for school. That's a teacher's job, right? Or, who am I as a parent to build their knowledge of the alphabet and colors and all of those things. But like Nat was saying, it starts with the relationship. And that's something that parents and caregivers more than anyone else, right, are equipped to do, is to build that relationship. I think back to something I saw once that was a program for parents, and they gave every parent a box, and the box opened, and they said, before they gave them the box, they said, everything you need to be an effective parent is right inside here. You gave the box and they opened it. It was just a mirror to back at the parent. And I thought that so signified what we try to do at VOCEL, is think about like, what you need is within yourself. And certainly, the group can support that, but what you need really is within you. And so I want to also, I'm going to watch time a little bit here. If anyone has it, I haven't been watching the chat, but if there's anyone who has questions for our panelists or other questions, let us know in the chat. We'll make sure we get those to folks. But I also want to come back to Joe and ask you a little bit about the long-term impact of a program like this, or of quality early experiences, because I think that with early education being with children who are so young, right? We're talking like this program, 2 years old, 3 years old. Sometimes it's hard to think about like, how is this going to pay off down the road? And so I'm wondering if you can speak about that a little bit, what you've seen at Chavez in terms of what's possible when children are really ready from the beginning.
Sure. Yeah. So our students who come to us in kindergarten prepared for school, whether it's they know how to read or don't know how to read, or they know their letter sounds, or they're just prepared, whether it's from a social emotional perspective or from whatever the experiences that they've had that have led them to be ready, however you define being ready. in kindergarten. It's hard to see this impact from just a couple of years and just talking about 2, 3, 4-year-olds. But really what we see is that those students, and we've tracked this over time, those students that are prepared in kindergarten, who come to school prepared in kindergarten, are the same students who, I'm just going to give you an example here, take algebra as a 7th grader and then take geometry, high school geometry, honors geometry at local high schools like Walter Payton or Back of the Arts High School as 8th graders. What's important about that is that though they don't get high school credit, they don't have to take those classes in high school, which allows them to take the next class, whether it's algebra trig or pre-calculus or calculus, or start taking AP courses that allows them to start getting credit for college, which allows them to finish college faster, so they don't have to spend as much money. So I'm talking kind of very far down the line, but it's all very connected. But what we see is those students that come to us in kindergarten are the ones that have those opportunities as 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders. They're the ones that are applying for scholarships as 6th graders, scholarships as 7th graders, algebra, geometry as 8th graders. Those are the ones that are going to be advanced in high school and have more opportunity. So that's typically what we see from those students that come to us prepared in kindergarten. And it's not that we can't handle those students that aren't as prepared. We're more than up to the task. And that's just what we do in the community that we work in. And the amazing teachers that we have and the amazing community, not just teachers, but from our custodians, the relationships that everybody has with our students, from the custodians to our security, to our office staff, to our support staff, just everybody, the relationships that they build with our students is so important to their growth. But what we see if we track those students that are prepared versus those students that come to us with absolutely nothing, which is very, very typical in our community, I'd say again about 50-50. Those students that are prepared long-term, it has very significant long-term impacts like the ones that I just shared.
Yeah, it's so powerful, because I think it's hard, right? It's hard for many of us to conceptualize that. What is this going to mean for this toddler, right? And we've even had people, when we talk about VOCEL's name, viewing our children as emerging leaders, thinking about like leaders, what is that you're talking about, 2- and 3-year-olds? But really emerging leaders, right? They're developing skills that are going to make it possible for them to access some of those opportunities that you mentioned, whether it is that, empathy, building relationships with a peer at the age of 3 is going to set them up to do that as well down the road. And I think it's so special to hear that those kind of door opening opportunities that you were mentioning that can really change a child's life, right? Are available when kids are, really ready from the beginning. I'm also struck by a post I saw today. I think it was in the New York Times. Some of you may have seen it as well, that showed kind of the difference in spending on young children under the age of 3 in the United States versus other countries. And we were last place, far below some of the other countries. So I think there's really, it's really a widespread challenge in terms of supporting children and supporting their parents and caregivers to ensure that they have that really strong start that we know is so important. So I'm going to ask everyone one final question, but also I apologize that one of my VOCEL colleagues is telling me I left up slides, so you couldn't see our panelists' beautiful faces as big as we had hoped. So I apologize for that. I'll take those down for a moment. But I'm wondering if you just had sort of a magic wand and were able to kind of make one change for parents and caregivers of young children. If there was anything that you'd think about that you would change in our world, thinking again about that difference in spending from other countries to ours, is there something that you feel parents and caregivers really need that you would change if you had the power to? And we can start with anyone who feels inclined.
I guess I could start.
Thanks, Rocío.
I think if we have these programs for parents, if they would just take the time, the moment, just to give it a try just to see what it really is. And at the end result, once the 10-week course is over, to see the difference that it makes in their child's life. I think if I had that power, I think it would be amazing. Parents will be so thrilled to see how much the children could grow in a very fun but educational way.
Thanks, Rocío. You're right. There is sort of that trepidation or kind of fear sometimes to try something new. And so for every parent, right, to just to give it a try, right? I appreciate that. Joe or Nat, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you used the word change. I'm not sure that I'm not sure I would change anything. You also used the word empower, and there's a slight difference. I don't know that I would change anything. You mentioned like they have it, like people have it in them. Like that example with the box in the mirror, they have it in them. So now I wouldn't change anything necessarily, but empower, like you said, help people understand the impact they can have on whether they initially believe in themselves or not, on helping them understand that they can have a really big impact.
Great.
And I think to echo Rocío and Joe, I just wanted to wave my magic wand and wishing every parent and caregiver to have earbuds, because there's so many voices from the outside telling them they should do parenting this and this and this way, when in fact, I really believe that they have it in them already. And if they can just find that community and support where they feel supported to listen inside to their parental wisdom and knowledge already, and find other peers who are going on the similar journey, who can really support them to be their authentic self and their full selves as a parent.
Yeah, thank you. I love that, because I think it's a common misconception about VOCEL's program, and I've seen it about some other programs too, that it might be like a parenting class, right? That you would come and learn how to prepare your child for school. And certainly, if a parent is looking for resources on a specific topic, we are happy to provide them, right? And that Rocío knows, because she's provided some of those resources to families. But also, there's such power in a community of people who care about each other to be that mirror for each other and validate, right? If a parent has an instinct and someone else is able to say, gosh, it sounds like you've thought about this a lot and you're probably right, like go with it. Sometimes that's the little nudge we need to listen to ourselves. And so I love that earbuds idea, Nat. That's gonna stick with me. Great. Well, I know we're getting close on time here, so I want to say thank you so much to all of you for joining tonight and kind of sharing your expertise and experience with us. And so thank you so much to each of you. And I'm gonna have you all turn off cameras for a moment, and I'm going to put us back on our slides, which I know I just turned off. So apologies again for leaving those up the whole time. I want to very briefly here, before we let all of you go back to the rest of your lives tonight, I want to give one more thank you again to Nat, Joe, and Rocío. And Rocío, please pass along our thanks to Joanna too. I know you two discussed at length together before tonight, but all three of you really exemplify the power of community in so many ways, and then how special VOCEL's community is. So thank you. And as I mentioned at the top of our hour here today, VOCEL works not only with parents, but also with teachers and school leaders who have such an important role to play for young learners. So I want to mention that you can learn more about VOCEL's work at our next two events. So first, we have the Power of Teachers, which is coming up on October 14th. Thanks to our sponsors, Mary and Paul Finnegan, for that event. And then we have the Power of School Leaders, which is coming on October 21st with presenting sponsors Lindy Hirschstone and Chris Coetzee. So we'll have some registration links coming up in the chat for you where you can make sure to reserve your virtual spot at those events. And then I also want to make sure to tell you that at VOCEL, our mission is really to help ensure every child has the foundation to learn, grow, and lead. So over the next 3 years, we will be growing all of our programs so that we can impact nearly 2,500 children by the year 2024, which is compared to less than 400 a year ago. So we're looking at some significant growth to bring the programs that Rocío and Joe and Nat were talking about to more families in Chicago. But that growth is really only possible because of our VOCEL village of partners and supporters. And so all of you who are on tonight are really a critical element of that ecosystem of extraordinary adults that we talk about, helping young children thrive here in Chicago. And already we've raised more than $210,000 through our Power of Community campaign. So really struck by just the generosity of folks here again in the VOCEL community. And we're going for a goal of $250,000 for this campaign. So you can really help us by making a gift today of any amount via the link in the chat. We really, can't do this work alone. We rely on the community. So we appreciate you for being a part of that, whether it's here tonight, by listening in, by spreading the word about VOCEL's work, or by making a financial contribution. And again, one final enormous thank you to all of our sponsors, including our Power of Community presenting sponsors, Lindy and Michael Kaiser, and our Power of Parents presenting sponsors, IMC. And also to all of you for joining tonight, again, for taking out time of your busy evening. I'm really proud to have you as a part of our community, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your evening.